Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira, sitting next to, once again, this John Teixeira guy. If you guys have any questions, just kidding, we are back this week to discuss Lease to Own. Now, you guys have any questions about this, you want to do this, use Google or something, but if you want to talk to us about something else, give us a call at 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com. All right, John, what are we showing? What money are we showing today?
So we don't want to help people do this. Is that what we're getting? Is that what you're getting at?
No, but if you've listened to this entire podcast, I'm assuming by the end of this you'll have nothing else to ask me about.
Okay.
At least,
right.
And then we don't need to discuss. But there's other things that you like. So
we were talking about. It was interesting. I'm surprised that we've gotten this far into the podcast without talking about this subject. To be honest with you, and it's because almost everybody brings it up, right? Like I have so many conversations with people, with potential tenants, with landlords and homeowners that want to do, for one reason or another, lease to own. It's kind of I don't want to say old fashioned, but it was much more common to do before, a while back. I don't think it's as common now.
I think it's more of a curiosity more than everyone wants to do it. I think it's something everyone's curious about because nobody really knows anything about. And it sounds on paper, just that title, right? Lease to own. Well, I already lease. I'd like to own. Let's do that. And then on the landlord side, it's like, well, I currently lease, but if they can treat it like they own it, that'd be preferred.
Exactly. So. There you go. You just outlined the benefits. And it's kind of an emotional thing, right? So
on both sides.
Yeah. So both of them think that they're not throwing their money. The tenant thinks they're not throwing their money away and that they're going to own this someday.
You said benefits. I'd say it's more like, detriments disguised as benefits.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that.
Never really a reality.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You want to talk about from the landlord side or from the tenant side first?
Well, let's talk about what it is. Is it as simple as it sounds?
No, it could be many things.
So you lease to own. What does that mean?
That basically means you try to tie two contracts together somehow that says that I'm going to lease this property to you and someday I'm going to sell it to you. And technically, by at least my state laws here in Texas, you can't tie those two contracts together. It's illegal to do. So if you do a lease to purchase in the state of Texas, you have to do it in a somewhat informal manner, which really isn't even binding anyways. So did that make sense?
Yeah, you made sense, but you just basically said you can't do it.
Legally, you can't do it the way they do it in other states. In other states, you can directly tie a lease contract to a purchase contract and say, I'm going to sell it to you like this. You cannot do that in Texas.
Well, yeah, outside of that, it's basically a contractual obligation. So it's not an informal agreement necessarily. It's just a contractual obligation that isn't directly contingent on another contract, this money should go towards this purchase, is to go towards this purchase. But as far as a purchase contract existing or anything like that.
That's a good point.
No.
That's what tenants think, right? That if they pay you $1,500 a month for 5 years, that somehow that $1,500 a month is going to go toward my purchase, right?
Yeah.
And there are landlords that set up deals like that where they say, okay, my normal rent is $1,500. We're going to do a lease to purchase. And this is the most legitimate type of lease to purchase I've ever seen. They'll say, we're going to help you by allowing you to pay an extra $500 a month every month and pay us $2,000 instead of the market rate of $1,500. And we're going to take that $500 and we're going to put it aside in an escrow account for you to use as a down payment so you can close on this in 3 years or 5 years. I have seen investors in the 90s. This was actually a pretty prevalent practice in the 90s. I have seen investors do this, especially in markets that are priced higher where affordability is an issue, right? California, New Jersey, the East Coast, those markets have notoriously, even back then, affordability was always more of an issue than the rest of the flyover states.
Do we have to start saying DFW? Do we need to start including DFW? No, I'm just kidding. It's getting there.
It is getting there.
It's getting there.
But
yeah, so lease to own, right? No. So why?
So what I just demonstrated to you, Kyle, was the most legitimate type of lease to own that I have personally ever experienced or seen, and actually makes sense for both parties. But it is rarely what is done.
Yeah, and I think it's because it sounds so good in the name and on paper, because people, like, we talk about the different avenues and different tools you can go in real estate, or really just do anything. Knowing the other stuff that exists, the only question you have is, like, why would you do this? Like, well, why does that make any sense? Sounds like extra steps that are just put you at a liability or put you in a risky situation that you didn't need to be in. I've never heard of a lease to own situation, at least in the state of Texas, that made sense to me. And that's mainly because it doesn't make sense it's not that it didn't make sense why you did it. It doesn't make sense why you didn't do something better, because there was better options. You may not have known about those options, of course. But lease to own is one of those things, like in a lot of industries, where it's kind of like the thing a lot of people are curious about, and sounds great, but never really works, right? There's probably 1 out of every 100 that it sounds like it worked better off than it would have. The other ones likely don't end up with the own part. The sale never actually occurs. That's probably
usually the case.
I don't have any stats on this, but just from what I know, it's probably more of these end up in court than end up sold.
Probably not wrong about that.
It's probably a pretty close ratio, even if I am wrong. But why would I say that? Why do they end up in court? Well, and what goes wrong with it not owning? Usually the two things are the same. What most people don't realize, if you do a lease to own and you pay the lease for like 3 years, and even in John's scenario, you put it in an escrow or whatever, if you end up not buying it, or 3 years later things change, you can't afford it, you can't get pre-approved, whatever the reason is, well, now you just leased for 3 years at $500 extra a month in your example. That escrow doesn't go back to you. That's I'd say 99 out of 100, that escrow becomes the seller's for doing it. That's your cancellation fee.
And when this became prevalent in the 90s, that was the sales pitch for landlords to do it. So because you would get extra money, and the chances of the tenant actually closing were really low. So I don't know. That seems like a disingenuous way to do business to me, but that is an advantage. It is absolutely a financial advantage, and you could absolutely do that if that's the way you want to run your business or run your rental empire.
Well, like seller financing exists as one of the alternatives, right? And that's what we've talked about, is like, all right, well, why not structure this as a seller finance deal? Okay, well, there's no money up front. Well, okay, then maybe do that for a year, and then the seller finance deal kicks into place. Those kind of lease to purchase might make more sense, but longer term things, don't make sense, because a lot of these lease to owns, like, they're still based on you qualifying, being able to get a mortgage when that time comes. Well, now you have a down payment, now you can't qualify for the house. Or did you lock in a price when you did the lease to own? Now that the price has gone up by $100,000, does the seller now want that $100,000 more on the sales price? Well, even if you did lock in a price, as John said before, these contracts aren't binding. So, now the seller can say, well, no, now you got to pay market value. These things, there's so many possible negatives. There's so many possible liabilities.
There's a lot of ways.
If the seller just decides, what, here's your escrow, the house has gone up by $200,000. I'm just going to give you your $15,000 escrow back, and I'm going to go sell it. And you thought you were leasing to own it for the last 3 years, and nope, I just decided different.
And
what's your recourse there?
Neither the landlord nor the tenant in that situation actually knows what's going to happen in the future, which is why they all make the decisions that they make.
Yeah,
if they knew the future, they probably wouldn't.
In the scenario I just described, say it was like $15,000 in that escrow, and they give it back to you and sell it for $200,000 profit. That was their decision to do. Well, you go sue them. Well, as you said, it's illegal to bind those two contracts, and he refunded your escrow money. So the part of the contract that he violated wasn't legally binding, so they're going to throw it out. So it's just too
And keep in mind,
There's scenarios that work.
Yeah,
but
you're talking about Texas too. So if
Yeah.
anybody's listening to this from another state, every state has their own laws about how to handle this. But the bottom line is the chances of it going south and the chances of it not coming to the conclusion you think it's going to come to are extremely high. They're so high that it's likely just going to happen. Period. It's likely not going to happen the way you think it is. Like 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, and I do want to caveat this. Sometimes there are companies specifically designed to do this.
There are.
And
some of them are very legitimate companies.
Yes, and we're not saying that that's not I still think the concept and the basis behind doing it is very subjective and should only be used in very specific scenarios. But, going through those companies can work, so I guess I'll caveat it with that. Because there's companies that like I forget the name of the one.
Home Partners is one of the ones.
Yeah, they actually, you pick the home, they buy it for you and lease it to you for a certain amount of time.
Totally legitimate program.
And then you convert it to lease. But they're also taking an equal risk with you there. In my opinion, they're letting you pick the home, and
they are.
If you don't buy it, now they're stuck with it,
and they're okay with that. So that's the reason why they do it, is they're okay with gaining inventory. But
they're very open about the fact that...
But you don't have to purchase there. So they've taken all the negatives that we're talking about, that we haven't gotten into some of them, but they're taking all the negatives out of their contract. Because you as the tenant, you don't have to purchase. Yeah. You have the option to purchase, but you don't have to. They're not going to cry if you don't. The tenant doesn't have anything to lose. They're not going to lose any more money if they don't. It's just a tenant-landlord obligation and a standard rental contract. So, Kyle, here's the thing. What I try to tell people is when you do a lease to own, what you do is you take two transactions, try to merge them together and way overcomplicate it. When in fact, you're not ready to purchase. So why are you even negotiating a purchase if you're not ready? If you don't have the down payment, if you don't have the credit, if you don't have blank to purchase, then why are we even talking about purchasing in any form whatsoever? Just rent so that you can have the freedom to rent what you want at whatever price you want with no further obligation and no further financial output. And then when you are ready to buy, then go buy.
Yeah, I mean,
whether it's the same house or a different house.
And if lease to own is on the table, there's probably a reason on the landlord side, right?
Exactly. So it's going to benefit the landlord.
It shows a willingness to sell the property to you, but also not a willingness to not lease it and sell it out on the open market. So, you know what you want lease to own in that scenario? Do exactly you can protect your liability. Lease it. Put your money in your own escrow account.
Exactly.
And then ask the guy 3 years later, hey, can I buy it?
And you'll have even more money then.
You'll effectively do the exact same thing without taking any of the risk. And that's the most basic alternative. There's different ones.
Exactly that all the time.
Because even if you sell or financed it from the landlord, you'd in that scenario be buying it. Title would be changing. The transaction being done would be a purchase. And then the seller would be your now lender. And yeah, if you don't pay them the mortgage or whatever, they're going to take it back from you, just like a normal purchase. But those scenarios don't do the qualifications. Or I'm not saying they don't do qualifications, but you're being qualified based on the seller's requirements, which you would assume that the seller in a lease to purchase scenario would qualify you a similar way, right?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Or no, maybe they don't want you to be able to qualify at the end of the 3 years.
You don't have any idea how they're qualifying. Yeah. It depends on who's doing it. So is it a reputable company that has a system set up for this? Then, yeah, they probably have qualifications a lot like a bank does. Is it, Rodrigo Lopez down the street doing it? And then he probably doesn't even care if you just give him cash and he'll, that's part of the reason why this becomes popular, especially out, when you get out of the suburbs a little bit, it starts happening more often because it's handshake deals. People know each other. People don't like, especially people out in the more rural areas, they don't like to sit down and do, business qualifications. They want it easy. The easy what they think is easy has way more weight than anything else, right? Whether it's financially or contractually advantageous to them doesn't matter as much as, oh, it'd just be easier for me to just rent from Kyle and
it's very one-sided. So,
Yeah.
I mean, most of them, even if you write up the contracts the way you want it done, it can be very one-sided. Because especially in Texas, because like what you said about it not legally being able to be binding means the landlord could just change it later, right? So even if it's not advantageous to them, they can change it to be. So, anything that, maybe a simple rule of thumb is anything that has a 2-word name, lease to own, and one party's side goal is half of that not to happen. It's probably not the best tool. So, it's most advantageous to the landlord if you don't end up owning it.
Well, there's one advantage we haven't talked about to a landlord also.
Well, landlords ask about this all the time too. So
yeah, they do. And so talking about it from the landlord side, like I think it's dangerous for a landlord to consider doing this for all the same reasons that we just talked about. But there are some advantages, and that is if they want to keep that money that we talked about, right? A, that's the biggest advantage. B, some of them try to treat the lease to purchase as if they've already sold it to them so that they don't have to do maintenance repairs. And most people think that in a lease purchase, that's the way it is. Now, you could set it up, the expectation up that way with the tenant and maybe get away with that because they just never call you for maintenance because that's what you told them when they and so they're honoring that. And so I've seen people get away with doing that, but legally and contractually, you really can't do that. That's your home. And you still have housing laws.
There's always a scenario where it's not going to work too. Like, that could work great and could go through and just work out. All right. But even if they do all the maintenance themselves and everything happens, but what happens when the house floods? Well, who has the insurance? Who's the homeowner? Mm-hmm. Is the maintenance is the leaseholder now responsible for the $50,000 in damages from the flood that an insurance policy would have covered?
Right.
Probably still does cover if the homeowner still has it, but are they going to put in a claim for you? You're responsible for maintenance. Like these questions when these things occur is what breaks this stuff.
Or how about a simpler one, like one you mentioned earlier was what if the AC break? What if the AC needs to be replaced? Right? How much is that? $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, depending on who you buy it from.
Yeah. Well, the scenario I brought up is actually, I was trying to go even more worst case, where it's something that you would have been protected and aren't because of this special structure. If the roof down needs replacement from a hailstorm or.
So how would you feel about doing that, repairing that damage or replacing an AC unit on a home that you technically didn't own?
I'll never know that. I'll never know
because you would never do it. I know. Do that. But that's the point. Is if you're living in the home under the expectation that I'm someday going to own it.
I think 100% of people are going to be pissed, even if they have a signed contract where it says if the AC goes out, I will be replacing it, even before I own it, and then it occurs, they're going to be mad.
You know what you'll find in that scenario if you never hear from them, the AC goes out and you get that house back. Like
you're not going to have an AC.
8 years later, you're going to find a bunch of window units all over the place. That's what you're going to find.
Or if they did replace the AC, you're probably not going to find an AC unit in that house.
Yeah, maybe. So. They might take it with them. That's a good point. I don't know. Any other advantages or disadvantages we need to discuss, Kyle, or did we max this one out?
Well, I'll go just one more step of the rent to own one, because some people ask about rent to own, which is essentially exactly everything we've talked about without any. You
just changed the word that has the same definition, kind of.
No, almost. Lease assumes a time commitment. Rent just means like you're not uncommitted, So I've seen those too, or heard of those as well. So
there's a slight deviation between those. So you can be kicked
out at any point for any reason, but you'll still get to own it one day.
Oh man!
So do we suggest this?
So which is better?
This is a good option.
Sorry.
Rent to own is. Like, if it's actually worded that way, it's a scam, for sure. So I'm just not even going to talk about it.
Yeah. That's good. Good move.
That's a good move.
All right, you started to ask, should we do this?
Should we do a lease to own and a lease purchase option? You didn't... Is that... even a good thing to have in there?
So if you find a program like the one we referred to, and there's another one, I can't think of the name of it, and there's other companies that do this, but the one we referred to at Home Partners, if I have a client, a kid, a family member that wants to do that, I have no reservations whatsoever. There is no disadvantage to them to do it. If I wouldn't do it with anybody else, with any other type of program. I wouldn't do it with an individual that was trying to offer it to me. I wouldn't do it with a small investor trying to offer it to me. That's probably the worst case scenario. I just wouldn't do it unless it was a larger corporation that had a system in place and there was no financial or contractual disadvantage. Otherwise, just don't do it, period.
I mean, if both parties completely understand and disclose all the risks we just talked about and they still want to do it, then sure. I mean, it's not like if you accept all of those things, then, then do it. But otherwise, no.
From a landlord's side, I would say if you insist on it, then fine. I mean, if it just depends on how you negotiate it.
And there are some things that can help that. Like I've seen, like I think Home Partners does this where like it increases after a year, like 2 or 3, or even the first year. I think that they predate the appreciation in there.
It progresses every year. So if you buy within the first year, there's a set sales price and a set rental amount. And then when you get into the second year, there's a new rental amount that goes up and a new sales price that goes up. And then third year, same thing. And then if you don't buy by the time the third year goes, then they have to create a whole new lease agreement with you, or you walk. So, or
and
you
do
buy
you think
it.
if you walk in that third year, it works out in their favor?
Well, when they started this and homes were appreciating the way they were, the answer was heck yes, it did, because they ended up with a home that was worth way more and somebody else paid for it while they were renting it. And so, yes, but I mean,
in theory, it doesn't sound like the worst thing for them. Like, you're getting a guaranteed renter day one on the purchase of an investment house that is going to treat it as if it's their new home, hopefully.
Right. And you had a seller do all the repairs.
Okay.
Because they negotiate all the repairs.
Who replaces the AC when it goes out in a Home Partner's house?
Home Partners.
There you go. Make sure to do it with a good program if you do it right. So, but we don't suggest it. Talk to a lender. That's another thing we didn't mention. Make sure maybe get pre-qualified or know where your qualifications are at before you consider this. On any end.
That's a good point, Kyle. That I'm glad you made it before we finished up here. Because if you are going to do this, you're really, really not smart to do it without knowing what the roadmap toward homeownership looks like, right? Like, understand what you need to do to become a homeowner in a conventional manner with a real mortgage before you walk down this path and just think that, okay, I'm going to go sign this lease to purchase contract and hope that in 3 years I'll just be ready. No, you need to know what you need to be doing and not doing during that 3-year period to be ready so that you are ready. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you won't be ready. Guarantee it.
Get ready to get ready.
Get ready to get ready.
Ready to get ready.
I like it. Did we kill this one?
You got to get ready if you're always ready. Yeah, we killed it. All right. If you guys have any questions about lease to purchase or want us to repeat these risks and the pros, don't need repeating, but give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney at weartpm.com. And John and Kyle are out.
We gone.